Hello, sweet friends, and welcome back to the Quilter's Candy Shop, where you will find sweet treats for the discerning quilter. Let's get ready for Easter. Last week, we made some lumpy, bumpy carrot cuties to put in our too cute fabric baskets. If you haven't seen either of those videos, I will link them at the end of this video so you can watch them and make some of your own quilty fun spring decor. The lumpy bumpy carrot cuties were so fun to make, I thought we could make some more cutie-patootie stuffies to fill our baskets. So today we are going to make the most adorable stuffed calico Easter eggs. Aren't those cute? Here is a regular egg out of my kitchen. And here is one of our stuffables. Isn't that sweet? You can make exquisite eggs out of your precious scraps. You can make eggs almost any size you like. You do not need a fancy ruler or a pattern to make stuffable eggs. I'm going to show you how to draw your own template so you can make excellent eggs of any size. Now, there are literally hundreds of free egg template patterns out on the internet, so it might be easier and faster just to download and print one of those. But if you want a particular size, you may need to make your own template. So here's how. To create an egg template, I found the best ratio to be 1 to 2. That means the pattern piece is going to be twice as tall as it is wide. Knowing that, you can make your eggs whatever size you want, as long as you stay within the ratio. Let's say you want your egg to be roughly 3 inches tall. Then you will need to add 1 inch to the height measurement to allow for the seam allowances and angular seams. That makes our new height measurement 4 inches tall. To apply our ratio of 1 to 2, you need to divide the height, 4 inches, by 2, making our panel width 2 inches wide. And lastly, you also have to allow for the shrinkage effect. Every time you stuff something, it's going to squish down because it's going to fill out in a 3D manner. So I recommend adding an additional 1/2 inch to the height in order to allow for stuffing. That is going to make our pattern dimensions 4.5 by 2 inches. Well, that's all the math we have to do. And obviously, this is not an exact mathematical equation, but it will get you the results that you're looking for. Let's make the pattern. First, you determine the size you want your egg to be. Let's stick with the 3-inch tall egg example for now, and follow the formula to draw the rectangle on the piece of paper. So after the math we just did, we will draw a 2-inch by 4.5 inch rectangle. So I'm just using my regular square ruler and a pencil and a piece of scrap paper. I'm putting this line back on the 2 and putting this line on the 4.5 and drawing the rectangle. There we go. Now, using paper scissors, we're just going to cut out the rectangle. This is the total size of our pattern. Next, we are going to fold it in half long ways, matching up the corners and the edges to find the center of the rectangle. Then, fold the rectangle in the other direction into thirds. This doesn't have to be perfect. We're just getting a rough 1/3 measurement. Open it back up, and now we have all the points we need to draw our pattern. Mark the top and bottom center points and the bottom third side points here and here. If you could quarter an egg like that and have the shell remain intact, you would find that the panel shape is similar to drawing a simple leaf. We're going to use the marks to draw the simple leaf shape for our pattern. The leaf shape should start and end at the 2 center points on the top and bottom, and it should touch the marks on the bottom third of the sides. So just connect the dots. This one comes down like this, and around to here. I'll do it this way. That comes around to here. And then down like this. And it's that simple. Now, if you're a little bit of a perfectionist, you may want to extend this line so that it has a little bit more length to the side and a little bit rounder bottom. So can you see the difference here? Also, you don't want to get your top point too pointy. So just give this a little extra roundness right here. See how I'm doing that? And then coming down. So that's the minuscule difference. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it can make a little bit of difference in your egg. This is one of the first eggs I've made, and you can see it's quite pointy at the top as compared to these. So just getting a little bit extra width along the top, length along the side, and roundness around the bottom can help your egg shape. After you're happy with your leaf shape, then you're going to fold your pattern in half again and cut it out. And so you can see I am opting for that outside line where I made my little corrections. Like that. And now both sides are the same. And there's our pattern. Now you'll notice if I fold this in half here, hopefully you can see this, you'll notice that the shape of the 2 points are different. So it is important to mark the top of the egg template. I'm just going to put a T right there for the top. Be sure to label your template with the pattern size of your egg. In this case, it's the 2" by 4.5 inches. That way, if you make more eggs in different sizes, you'll know which is which. Now, let's make an egg. To get a 3-dimensional egg, you need to cut 4 panels from the template. You can use all the same fabric, like I did here, or you can pair a couple of fabrics, or you can make all 4 panels different. It's really up to you. You need 4 pieces of scrap fabric. I happen to have these leftover squares. They're only 4" and so I just keep them on the side. I'm going to use these for my eggs. Stack your fabric with the first one right side up, the second one facing down, the third one right side up, and the fourth one facing down. If you're using a strip, you can also just fold the strip in half and in half again, and you will have 4 layers just like this. Lay the egg pattern on top and trace the panel shape onto the top of the fabric stack. Remove the pattern before you pin the layers together, and now carefully cut out the shape through all 4 layers. Also, if you leave the pattern on while you're trimming, there's a chance you'll cut your pattern and distort it for the next time you want to use it. So it's best to just take the pattern away and cut on the line. Separate the 2 pairs like this and mark the top of all 4 layers. I'm just going to flip these over and mark that top. And now we're ready to take them to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4" seam on the right side of one and repeat on the right side of the other. I recommend using a little smaller stitch than usual. Smaller stitches help make corners easier, and it will hold this nice and tightly together when we start stuffing it. Start at the top of the egg and sew down. There's no need to backstitch on either end because we're going to sew right over the top of it. Here I've sewn my edges, And now it's time to trim. You can leave this, but it does turn better if you trim this back to a generous 1/8 inch seam allowance. And it doesn't take much, it's just a little bit that comes off, but it does make a difference. And then you need to notch this curve. And as you can see here, I just did 3 notches. That's it. That's all it takes. And make sure your notch does not come to the stitch line. For sure, you don't want to go through the stitch line, but really you need to leave a little bit of threads in there so that it holds together and doesn't fray out through your seam allowance. Turn one of your pairs right side out and sort of finger press that seam allowance over to one side, all the way around the curve. Like that. And open up the other half and slide the turned one inside. Make sure you've got your top point and your top point at the same side. Now we're going to nest this seam. So we've turned this one and finger pressed this seam allowance over. And so we want to make sure this goes the other way. And you can feel in there if they're locked in tight. And I do recommend putting a pin here because it's really important that these nest together and stay. And then you can do the other side. This seam allowance is all going to the left, so we want this to go to the left and this to go to the right. Get the edges lined up. The seam allowance is going the right way, and then squish them until you get those seams nested and you can feel they're locked in together. Again, I would pin this. Now, if you've done your job well, you don't need to pin around the outside. Everything should pretty much line up, and it's going to be easy sewing all the way around. Now, you will want to leave an opening for turning, so I recommend starting at the curve on one side and come down past the bottom, then all the way up to the top. And when you come around this top, don't sew it into a point. Make this a curve right here. It's really important. And then when you come down here, you're only going to go a few stitches because we want to leave about that much open for turning and stuffing. All right, let's take it to the machine. Here we are. Now don't forget to backstitch at the front and end of the opening because there is going to be some pressure here for turning and stuffing, so you want those to stay secure. When you're done, you're going to trim and notch just as before. As you're trimming your seam allowance, when you get close to the opening, just turn off and leave the full seam allowance here at the opening. We're going to need that in order to close up the hole. I'm notched and trimmed. It's time to turn our egg. The hole's going to be quite small, but you'll have no trouble because this is a very small project and everything's just going to push through quite easily. Once you get it turned out, stick your finger in there and make sure everything is pushed through. Run your finger along all the seams to make sure they are pushed out and that there are no holes. You want to check your end intersections and make sure you did a nice job and that everything lines up. If they're a little bit off, don't worry about it. Once this is stuffed, no one's ever going to see it. But if you're unhappy with it, now is the time to make the correction. Let's stuff an egg. You are going to need some polyfill to stuff the eggs. And you can stuff them as tight as you like. Just for a little hint, this is a small hole, and stuffing will always go better if you use little bits of it at a time. And then you just shove it in there as best as you can. And it's just going to take a little bit of time before you have your egg completely filled. So small wads shoved in the hole, and then once it's in the hole, you can move it around and pack it down. So if I get that in there, I'm going to kind of fill this bottom round side first, then a little bit of the tip, and then I'll fill out the sides. It always takes more polyfill than what you think it's going to take. That entire wad is now inside this egg. You can stuff these as stiff as you like. You can have soft eggs or you can have hard eggs. I like a little firmer egg because I love the way it actually fills out these curves and it just looks better. Once you get the firmness you like, we're going to close the opening with a little hand stitching. So a simple needle and thread will do, not the end. And start from the inside so you bury your knot and come up. And you can squeeze like this and push down on that batting, and that will pull your seams together. Now I like to use a ladder stitch, but you can use whatever stitch works best for you. Once you have your stitching done, tie off the end and bury the tail in the center of the egg. You're probably going to have to mess around with shaping the egg a bit. You can just roll it around in your hand, do some poking and pushing, like to pump up the top, and just sort of poke and press until you get it into the shape you like that. And here they are. Oh my gosh, these are extremely cute calico eggs. You can use them as decorations for your Easter table, as place cards for brunch, or use them for the Easter egg hunt. No stinky sulfur summers if one of these goes missing. I'm going to put a couple of each of these into my Too Cute baskets for the kids. I hope you enjoyed this creative explanation on how to create your own stuffed egg pattern. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and drop us an exciting emoji in the comments. We really appreciate your support. And from all of us, have a happy Easter. Now, go sew something sweet. Bye!